Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. Alrighty. Let's get this thing going. Welcome to the Rough Report, January 14th, 2021. Nat's going to be joining us very shortly. Oh, there she is. Uh-oh. I'm going to try calling her. Let me try this again. Okay. Seems like it's working. It's dialing her, right?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, baby.
All right. Well, you're on.
Sweet.
We're on the air right now. So, Nat Prince, everybody. Yeah. I was just about to get ready to dive into this thing. I had a bunch of things I wanted to remember on my phone here. Okay, let's see.
Did you want me on video this time? I look cute, I can.
I just don't know how I'm gonna actually make that work now. If you let me know ahead of time, I probably could have set that up. But now that we're on the air, probably not so much. But I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We'll keep that. Well, obviously, you always are. Oh, God. Why am I having such a hard time finding this stuff? Okay, anyway, let's get into it.
Cool.
I'm just going to forget the thing that I had on my phone there. The first thing I wanted to get into and what got me into this was a article from Canadian Dimension here. When will the Trudeau government finally end its embrace of Juan Guaido? And yeah, basically, there's a lot of takes on. Whoa, what are you doing there?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know you could hear that. I was
yeah,
just readjusting.
Totally can hear that. Okay. Yeah, of course, there's a lot of takes on Venezuela. A lot of them that aren't so good. That jeez. You can hear my phone signal coming through, I think. So I'm going to get rid of that. Yeah, there's a lot of takes on there. A lot of them aren't so good and come through the filter of, we like to think that here in Canada we don't have this filter of propaganda. That, we're like this liberal free speech country, so we don't have a problem with propaganda. We don't have a problem with skew because we're so free speech that we're gonna always get the full picture, right? And that's obviously not the case, because when you look at even the fact that just this past October, the MAS, the Bolivian government, under Maduro, well, under a new leader now, but that same government was reelected by a great degree. So to say that, all this stuff that's been going down over the past couple of years, that the vast majority of Venezuelans don't want this government. Um, you know, we're not getting, you got to admit, in our mainstream Western media, we're not getting the whole truth there. And there's a lot of like kind of imperialistic, capitalist hegemonic interest that is happening there. And yeah, I just don't understand how people can be so like seemingly unanimously skewed on this.
Do you mean about Venezuela specifically? Because, like, honestly, I have nothing that I can offer of value in terms of Venezuela.
uh,
Nothing.
well, just in terms of like, you know, I'm sure you've seen it historically, the skew that we get in regards to how we treat other countries and other governments when we say they're undemocratic or they're bad to their people or whatnot, and the amount of kind of like imperialism and hypocrisy even that comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, for example, just the uh, notion that Canadians are polite peacemakers, right? Like, if that's not an example of propaganda right there, I don't fucking know what is.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Like it's in propaganda is such like a word that it gets thrown around a lot. Like it does almost inherently have a loose term, loose sort of meaning, and mostly it seems to have a negative connotation among people. But
Mhm.
like, yeah, and again, because it has that negative connotation, we only look at like we tend to only think of propaganda as something that is like foreign.
Mhm.
It has to be something that's happening like to us from somewhere else or to somebody else, um, because that just doesn't happen here,
No.
ostensibly, right?
I
And
mean, isn't that in and of itself a product of effective propaganda?
well, yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I mean to say at the
Yeah.
end of that is that that's what's effective about it is because we kind of tend to think that everything we do as a society is this default normal that's like good, right?
Hmm.
And and we talk about the atrocities that these other countries commit, and it's just like we're either actively doing the same thing right now or have done it tons historically without really making any kind of amends for it, you know?
Yup. Like it's so funny how um the ways that we don't recognize propaganda and the way that they um uh, just infects every aspect of popular culture.
hmm
Like for example, I remember watching, for example, the movie Armageddon with like Bruce Willis and Ben
Oh
Affleck.
yeah, that's some
Like,
great
do you
American
remember
propaganda right
how
there.
like yeah,
Uh,
like do you remember how hard that propaganda hit you in the face with like the waving flags and all that? Oh my God. It's like
oh yeah,
yeah, it basically could
fucking
have been a
America, baby.
recruitment. Yeah, like it
Uh,
basically could have been a recruitment commercial for like the armed forces or something. It
yeah,
was absurd. Like
absolutely.
it was unsubtle.
Yeah, the definitely unsubtle is a way of putting that. Uh, Almost like unbelievable in a way, like in how in how like kind of like ham-fisted it is, but like people like eat it up. But even then, like even when I was younger, I could kind of like see what was going on there, like the sort of like yeah, America. I
Yeah.
don't think I don't know if at the time when that movie dropped that the word like propaganda was really strong in my vocabulary or not,
Mm.
but I definitely had that sense of it, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's like that ending when he Bruce Willis decides to blow himself up. Like, come on, I was in tears. You can't help it. That's a great moment. effective propaganda, I guess.
I'm a little bit older than you, so I guess I was just jaded.
Yeah, yeah. You were
Because
probably
I
a lot
just
more jaded. Yeah, like I was like I think like 11 or 12, you know. So
yeah
thinking of like, dad sacrificed his life for his daughter and the whole planet
yeah.
and like, it was like like that kind of hit me as a good moment at that age. And
Whereas
yeah.
I was already a cynical teenager, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, Bruce. Yeah, it hit different at my age than yours at that time.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody who are tuning in, by the way. Make yourselves known. Leave a comment if you wish. But yeah, let's going back to this the essence of this article here is basically like kind of what I was getting at is that you know whatever you think about the Maduro government and the Chavez government that came before it, there's obviously a strong demand on behalf of many people that want this government and this continued imperialism against these countries that democratically vote for socialist governments is it's nuts.
But it's also so ironic, literally right now, a week after the U.S. attempted coup.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like, to think, oh, this crazy stuff doesn't happen in these, super advanced
Mm,
big ideas first world
civilized.
civilized countries. Yeah, right? And there you have it.
hmm
Yeah. But yeah, like I'm not going to, defend everything that's happened under the Maduro government. I'm not going to defend everything that's ever happened under any government. But that's the
hmm
thing when you're talking about like socialism versus capitalism, and you want to like compare them as if, um, the efforts to execute them is like in communism or in those left wing ideologies, that it's somehow like more damaging or has been statistically more damaging to humanity and stuff like that without looking at our own history and our own ongoing history and the things that we've done and the things that we continue to do. um, it's kind of rich
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, right? Like, you know I was thinking about like, yeah, like I have a lot of criticisms of Chinese communism and the fact that they are, pretty not great on the workers' rights end of things, and a lot of people work grueling hours under grueling conditions. And I remember, I think I was actually talking to you about this, and you kind of
hmm
immediately had the thought of, well, yeah, that happens to a lot of people here too.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, of course. It's again, how much better are we? Like, you're talking about there's like 1 billion people in that country compared to how many do we have here? Like 35 million, something like that.
hmm
I can't quite remember what the population of Canada is offhand, but
Something like,
it's
yeah,
somewhere
it's
around
in
there.
30
It's
million.
not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's not huge, especially as far as a country as large as ours goes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so when we're trying to like criticize other countries for things that we're actively not great on, or don't
hmm
analyze ourselves on, or don't take enough time to analyze ourselves on, again, that in itself is a form of propaganda.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Kind of resulting in the hegemonic idea that what we do and how we do it is, despite its flaws, perfectly normal and perfectly acceptable in the best of all situations. You know, this is the best we could possibly do.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's kind of, again, it's just kind of rich, right?
Yeah. It's like, if
To
this is the best we could do, then we're not sending our best people.
Mhm. We're not sending our best people. That's for sure. Um,
Oh, by the
yeah.
way, with that
Mhm.
intro, should we start talking about Ford?
Oh yeah. What, like the new COVID restrictions or lack thereof, rather,
Yeah,
perhaps?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like, don't worry, everything's on the table. Like,
Yeah.
everything's so much on the table that we've gone to the basement and we've got the table that we reserve for company, and we've
That
also
really
put
long
the
table, like it's
yeah, and
extendable. It
we
has a couple leaves that you can
yeah,
put
exactly. We put the
in the
leaves in the
middle.
tables, and we've got like a variety of lawn chairs to extend the table. Oh my God. But fortunately, don't worry, we don't need help from the federal government. Um, so just stop looking at what's happening in long-term care homes, and also don't just stay at home. Just stay at home.
Hmm.
Um, unless you are an essential worker, which by the way, everyone is an essential worker. So no, we're not gonna we're not gonna tell
Yeah.
you what constitutes an essential
We're
worker,
apparently just all so very essential. I didn't
right?
realize how essential everybody
Doesn't it make
was.
you feel so warm and fuzzy to know that you're essential?
To know that I'm essential, or to anybody, oh, excuse me, that is told they're essential and still is, going home and struggling with their bills.
Yeah, like you're so essential that you need to go into work. What do you mean that you should get pay that's commensurate with the importance of your job? You should feel
Hmm.
honored,
And
you
not even that.
essential person, you. We're gonna bang some more pots and pans. We're gonna bring that back,
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that hasn't come back.
right?
Quite frankly,
And
yeah.
like I understand the genesis of it
Oh yeah.
because like I mean I don't even
Nobody
think
knew
that
what they were doing. We were all just
well not
grasping at
just that
straws. We're trying to
not
have a
just
good
that but like
time.
but we were all locked inside,
Yeah.
and honestly it was like a good excuse for people at a designated time of day to make noise and scream at the top of their lungs in a
Yeah, that
socially
had to have been, that was probably
acceptable way.
cathartic. Yeah, that was probably
Yeah.
pretty cathartic for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like honestly, I think that even just for people to just let that shit out, I think that
Hmm.
was a healthy, good idea.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um and
Because
in
sometimes when you're in a pandemic, you just need your designated screen time.
naturally.
Yeah, I could use my designated screen time right now. I tell you what, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there's definitely like a lot of reason to scream, like kind of referencing earlier the attempted coup that
Hmm.
essentially went down on Capitol Hill in the United States. Um, Probably not like so much something that is entirely over. Um,
No, it's probably, number one of dot dot dot.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you have the National Guard there being prepared for everything leading up to Inauguration Day, and who knows what the security there is going to look like
Well, at the same
after
time,
that.
we don't know who in the National Guard was there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even if they weren't physically there on January 6th, like who is complicit and who is down?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is that in this, to anyone who's been paying attention, this is no surprise that white supremacists have infiltrated law enforcement and the armed forces.
And
Um,
of course,
this,
representative government as well.
yes, naturally, the ones who are giving people tours the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like I mean, if you did not know this, because like I'm not going to shame people for not knowing things if they don't know what they should know. But if you've been paying attention and reading up about this and then didn't know, I don't know how your media has failed you because this has been common knowledge for a while.
Yeah.
Like the FBI has been putting out reports. Fuck, just you know, anecdotes of people being like, yeah, my so and so brother-in-law, cousin-in-law, best friends, roommates, teachers, dog sitter, yada yada. Their armed forces, and they wear white hood on weekends. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've known that this is
Yeah.
a thing, right? Like even like especially in conjunction with something like Black Lives Matter, we see how many law enforcement officers are either murdering people or being complicit while black folks are being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like none of this should really shock. And what concerns me and confuses me is that like I'm not 100% certain where we have. I mean, okay, actually, I am a little bit certain where we have failed in reaching people to help them understand what's happening. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
mainstream media owned by the Koch brothers and like
Koch brothers.
yeah. So like I understand that mainstream media has failed us. And I understand that social media has failed us because
Yeah.
look at how radicalizing it has been for the right and spreading their misinformation and
Well, yeah,
propaganda.
and speaking of spreading it and like the repercussions that it has here, and that kind of brings us to kind of like the greater topic of what I was thinking today's show would be about, and that's kind of like the whole uh, big tech monopoly in censorship and the dynamics kind of around all of that. But like, yeah, and directly to what you said, um, like look at the influence that it kind of has here in Canada. This is the NiagaraThisWeek.com, and anti-mask
Mm-hmm.
protesters attempt citizens arrest of the St. Catharines mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is just like this is bonkers kind of Canuck Trumpism where they're just kind of like looking at what they're doing and
Yeah,
kind of going yeehaw, um, let me get some of that.
yeah, and
And
there are widespread consequences for
yeah.
this shit. And
Hmm.
so and like and that's the frustrating thing is that you know we try so hard to protect freedom of speech without having any understanding of consequences.
Yeah.
And like right now, we are reaping the consequences.
Yeah, if we're not like, accountable or responsible to some degree for our speech,
Mhm.
um, you know, this is what the fallout is going to be. You're going to fuel uh, people's sense of ignorance. And, we just see it time and time again. Like one of the best examples and arguments I've seen for sort of, I don't know how you would put it, like strategic censorship, if you will, like the implementation of protections of minorities from hate speech, for
Mhm.
example, is like, you had that interview between Jim Jeffries and Jordan Peterson. And, you know, Jordan Peterson was being all the ultra pro free speech thing, kind of, negating the nuance. And as Jeffries pointed out, well, we implemented civil rights laws and that made America a better place. And that made it so you couldn't actively discriminate against people of color. And it's inarguable that it made America a better place as a
Mhm.
result.
Yeah.
So, like, that's kind of like the prime example that, like, I can understand that people are concerned that the government overreach of what is and isn't free speech and what can and cannot get you in trouble. Like, yeah, that's definitely a topic worth talking about.
Hmm.
But we're kind of like, we've had hate speech laws and a solid understanding of this dynamic for a long time. And not only that, with a solid understanding that in a lot of ways, our hate speech laws and protected speech laws are kind of ineffectual in the
Hmm.
way of, because like we treat it on this case by case basis, but then actually proving the fact that somebody committed a hate driven crime in court is for some reason extremely difficult. So hate speech is not very often levied against people. It's not very often used, even
And
in situations where it might blatantly be of influence.
yeah, and that's why hate speech laws aren't enough. We need the social repercussions behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the way that some things have swung is that with social media, um, for folks have been getting traction with this idea of like, oh, let's trigger the libs, haha, I'm being silenced, yada yada, is
Even though my
cool and
opinion's
edgy.
everywhere,
Yeah,
I'm being silenced. Yeah.
yeah, it's like cool and edgy to
Yeah.
be crass and say the things that quote unquote we're not allowed to say. Um,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, that has obviously gained traction,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, like, with lack of social consequences, then it's kind of like in a friend group. So let's just like bring it down to like the, microcosms.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in your friend group, you've got Bob, and Bob, quote unquote, is a nice guy. He's always been good to me. But
We're
sometimes
not
when he
talking
gets
about
drunk,
you specifically, Bob, my stepfather, in case you're watching.
no,
Yeah.
no, not a Bob we know, just the theoretical Bob, Bob
Yeah.
Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bob Smith, like, he's a nice guy. He's always been good to me. Yeah, sure, when he's drunk, he might say some slurs and off-color jokes, but he's always been good to me.
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of the boiling frog too, right? Like,
Yeah.
Bob is ostensibly a nice person because, he knows me and perhaps I exist in various levels of privilege that he respects. Um, but by me not saying anything when he says shit that's not cool, I'm ostensibly giving him permission and also um, making it seem like I'm on his side when he says shit like that.
Yeah.
Like even if I'm laughing awkwardly when he makes a rape joke, he thinks that I'm agreeing with the joke, right?
Yeah.
And so in these small contexts, um, this affects what people get away with, and also it goes bigger than that, right? Like it doesn't just stay in the home, it doesn't just stay hanging out in the garage. Like how
Mm-hmm.
many of these people who are storming the Capitol um, have folks who would say they're like, oh yeah, I know Bob's a nice guy. I know he, can get a little bit riled up when he's drunk, but didn't expect him to storm the Capitol or anything. And it's like people tell you who they are.
Yeah.
like, like maybe you didn't believe them, but people do tell you who they are.
And I understand like this kind of human social thing, especially like this kind of sense of civility and politeness that the general amount of Canadian society seems to kind of like even boast themselves on. Like, I get it. Like, kind
Mm-hmm.
of, in the sense of always wanting to find the friendly area to just be friendly, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But
and
like this
yeah.
is yeah, this is part of the waspy sort of don't want to make waves
Mm-hmm.
kind of passive aggressive just sort of like oh shush shush don't
Yeah.
make things awkward at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
No, Uncle Bob, the Bob Smith, the he's the one who is making things awkward at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Like I don't care if I get upset, like, oh, he's just trying to get a rise out of you, and it's worked, and you are helping, and you are making sure that he can continue to get a rise out of people. Like, why is that an excuse? Like, if we shut this down, sure, maybe he's not going to change his mind immediately,
Mm-hmm.
but if we stop reinforcing the behavior and the thoughts and making it seem like we're agreeing with
Yeah.
him, then we'll get a lot further than this bullshit of being like,
Well,
oh, it's more
mhm.
polite to just, move along.
Yeah.
Like we can't keep moving along. There's going to be no place left to go.
Yeah, yeah, and well, and that's just it. Speaking of no place left to go, that kind of like, yeah, you're having a way of bringing me around to segues here, and we didn't rehearse that. But there's this image that I like a lot with the called like it just quickly explains philosopher Karl Popper's idea of the paradox of tolerance,
Yeah.
and this is basically it right here, and it basically describes the idea that when you create space and are tolerant of people who have obviously hateful and bigoted and hate driven ideas um, that are cruel, you create the conditions for that cruelty to fester.
Yes.
Tolerating intolerance will always make for more intolerance. They are always on the offensive, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. Like, it seems like a paradox to kind of have to try and gatekeep and limit this stuff. But if we don't have standards around what we can consider acceptable and understandable in the public sphere, um, I don't know. Like, we live in a
Yeah.
society, you know.
Well, like we see this happen at work in our friend groups and
Hmm.
in all these little microtransactions that we go through every single day, right?
Yeah.
If someone's an asshole and everyone just rolls their eyes and like doesn't do anything about it, they
Hmm.
continue being assholes. Like
Hmm.
it is a very few and far between people who have the ability of self-reflection to be like, you know what, I don't actually want to be an unlikable prick. I'm just gonna, no one has said so, but I'm gonna change. I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna change, right?
Hmm.
Like that is so infrequent that it happens that way.
Yeah.
And like I understand that, we all have to gauge our own spoons, our own safety, just the repercussions of our employment. Like I know that we have got all these things that we need to juggle. And so I'm not gonna like point out any one particular and be like, you know what, I don't care that, your employment is precarious. You
Yeah.
should have told Becky to go fuck herself and then reported her to HR. Like I'm not going to pretend that this is the perfect answer.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just saying
yeah,
that
and by
like
the way, in an ideal sort of like more leftist society, even if that person lost their job, um, because of them being like a hateful person, they wouldn't starve.
yeah,
They
right?
wouldn't be without paying their rent. They wouldn't
Hmm.
lose that.
Yeah,
They would just lose their career or job or whatever, right? And
yeah.
have to like experience the consequences of that. But they certainly wouldn't be desolate as a
Yeah,
result of it,
because like
right?
that's something that absolutely holds some people back
Hmm.
is that, oh no, if I speak up and they get in trouble, then I have ruined their A B C D E yada yada, they're homeless.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And it's
so
like, yeah, and that protects a lot of like ugly, hateful people because it's like, oh, they would, lose their pension or whatever, and I wouldn't want that to happen. And it's like,
yeah, and
and I
unfortunately,
get that. That's understandable. I don't think, depending on what they did,
yeah,
how bad it
and
was,
it's the
but
compassionate
mm,
people who are concerned about the bad things in the first place
yeah,
that have those concerns.
yeah,
Whereas if you were already a fucking asshole, you're
hmm,
probably not as concerned about the employment status of anybody else because you're a
hmm,
fucking asshole, right?
yeah. But like extrapolating that even further to the greater point of like what's happening right now and what's kind of like again sort of put this in what I sort of see as a bit of a tired free speech debate in a lot of ways, um, is the fact that, like big tech, so to speak, the billionaire, rich, social media and internet-based companies that are ostensibly now enforcing their will of what constitutes speech and what doesn't upon the people as a result of their, the control they have over those respective places. So, um, you know, and there's like kind of this big question of like, we should all be concerned that they're allowed to do this because this can, first of all, this can backfire on us. And I have some strong criticisms of this idea of backfiring because no. This is not something that will backfire on us. This is something that's already been negatively affecting the left for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have been censored in the way that they've been complaining about being censored for decades.
Mm-hmm.
When like again, like what you're seeing in Venezuela and things like that, when like more left wing and socialist governments are even like democratically voted in, you have corporations like Coca-Cola tossing labor organizers out of helicopters and things like that. Like, if you want to talk about censorship and limiting people's speech and right to organize in their self-interest and whatnot, look no further than situations like that, right? But now we're getting hung up on this idea that these corporations here are limiting their speech, and this isn't about, what you have to realize is this isn't about free speech for them. It's not ideological to these companies. They don't have a liberal bias. They were happy to reap the benefits of the traffic driven by the far right and fascistic people, and it drove traffic for them. It sold ads. They were happy to boost it and allow it to happen for as long as it was convenient. And then the second it wasn't, and it might be some sort of legal or PR disaster for them, that's when they started cutting it off. That's when they started taking a stand. The only stand that they were taking is an act of self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, when you're talking about, these liberal people, like, do you think honestly people like, Jeff Bezos in control of Amazon, which is in control of huge sectors of their internet through their servers and whatnot, and was like essentially able to kind of shut down Parler in a huge way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like, do you honestly think a guy like Jeff Bezos and the people that control that company have a liberal bias? Like, they want to vote in the kind of people that are going to limit their power and
Mm-hmm.
distribute their wealth? You think they're leaning in that direction at all? Like, anything about who they fund and the things they say and the things they do? What about any of that makes you think that they have some sort of even centrist bias, let alone left wing?
Mm-hmm.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's not a thing, my guy.
Yeah, like you see the most baffling of examples, of course, in Donald Trump, where it's like, what is with these kind of like, I say what is with sort of rhetorically. We could definitely have a few theories on it, but what is with these people that think Donald Trump or anyone who would be like a billionaire who was never a public servant, think that they'd somehow be the savior of the working class? This guy's never had to work a hard day in his life. What about this makes you think that, like, yeah, he's like, he understands me and my needs and he's on my team? Like, he doesn't, he has no concept for what your life is,
Well,
and
especially
nor
in
does
that
he
the
care.
Yeah, especially not the difference between a hard day at the office versus a hard day of minimum wage manual labor.
Yeah,
Like these things are vastly far apart.
yeah.
I've worked like oh both in like wide
Yeah.
range of different jobs.
Just like not even just like not to stress the point too much of like he's never had to work hard, but like once you have a class divide like that, once you
Mm,
are in the higher echelons of class, it is so easy, obviously just start acting in your self-interest and assuming everything you do is good and right because look how much money you have. And
yeah,
it's you kind of associate your wealth with merit, which is obviously in many cases not congruent.
yeah, and especially given the um, access to the kinds of quote unquote self care that someone has in that kind of income bracket, or the
Mm-hmm.
access to the kinds of assistance that someone has.
Yeah.
Like you and me, like, we'll work, if we're working overtime, we're working like 12, 14-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
We are still the ones who come home, feed the cats, clean the litters, make dinner,
Mm-hmm.
do the dishes, clean up after ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, because I've got benefits that you're now on, like maybe we can get a massage or something if we need to, which something is extremely privileged as is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't make the kind of have an on-call maid and nanny and masseuse comes to the apartment to sneak in that hour when we're in between meetings and like
Yeah. Exactly.
like there's and even when we're working a lot of overtime and we're like, yeah, maybe I'll just order takeaways. The kind of access to even takeaways at our income level versus when you're making mad money, maybe you just have a personal chef, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you can maintain this healthy balance between work and life. Whereas, for schmucks at our level, um, fuck, it
Yeah.
is entirely different animals. And that's even, for two people who are doing, relatively well. Back when I was making minimum wage and shit
Mm-hmm.
and just, struggling just to make rent.
Yeah.
Fuck, yeah, there's no time for that. Like I still had all the responsibilities, only now I had like, two plus jobs and always trying to um try to
And
figure
you
out
know
communication and shit.
how limiting is that to your
Yeah,
ability to be able to like exercise your right to express yourself and your grievances
yeah.
to like what is legal, what isn't, like protesting and speaking up against the government and whatever. Um,
Yeah, like when your time is so limited and precious because you've got all these balls in the air that
Sort
you're
of the
desperately trying
illusion
to
of
keep going.
choice, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, how limiting is that to your free speech? And like to the greater point when it comes to you know, big tech and things like that. Um, there's only like if you really want to have free speech protected as it is under the law in terms of like how we establish free speech, um, the only reasonable answer is to break these companies up into a million pieces and make them public entities.
Yeah.
Um, that if you're not talking about this in the context of um, monopolies and I'm forgetting the term right now. Fund trade, uh, trust. Uh,
The fun babies?
what? No, trust law. God,
Oh,
I can't.
antitrust?
Antitrust. There we go. If we're not thinking of it in the context of antitrust law, then we're lost because
Mm,
that's really, I think, the only context in which we would gain ground here. If you're worried about how this may have like repercussions, and that can go around in circles and circles. Like I said, these repercussions are already been happening against the left. Now it's
mm-hmm.
bouncing back. This is all stuff that was set as precedents by the right. in order to establish, stifling of the left in the first place. Now it's coming back to bite them. Now
Hmm.
we're looking at the possibility that, just in turn, they may up the ante and, broaden the definitions of what is insurrectionist, what is terrorism, what is domestic terrorism. They
Hmm.
might just do that cause further harm, but that's just going to go around in circles and circles, if you allow it to, right? We just have to have a certain set of standards there, and especially, yeah, in terms of these social media companies, in terms of how they behaved and handled all this sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, it just proves that they're not responsible.
No,
So,
and the stupid thing is that this isn't new. Like I was an organizer with Slutwalk Toronto from about 2011 till 2015 or something like that. And yeah, in like 2011 and 2012, it's like, what the fuck are you doing, Facebook? Like we've got people making rape threats and posting child porn on our pages.
yeah,
Like, what the actual living fuck are you doing? And
yeah,
like in terms of reporting people and getting them their accounts banned as opposed to just like blocked from certain pages. I
yeah,
mean, never mind the fact that they can just create new accounts in 5 minutes.
yeah,
Like, not a lot has changed.
exactly. And that's yeah, they the companies like this massive and the way they operate. Uh, they don't have the capacity or don't have the willfulness
Yeah,
to
it's not a matter
make
of
the
capacity.
capacity
It's yeah.
to properly monitor and responsibly monitor this stuff. Like the amount of stuff that is now or has always been flagged as abusive when you say something like, you know,
White men are trash.
yeah, men are trash versus, um, why don't you go die, faggot, and stuff like that, things like that have been said to me where I report it,
Mhm.
and then you get the response back that says, oh, we saw nothing here that violated community standards. It's like,
Whereas, oh, and I've also
that
gotten
is
warnings that
baffling.
yeah, I've also gotten warnings that I've reported too many comments, therefore I
Yeah.
am banned from reporting
So
for that.
these companies in the way that they operate and the profits that they're driven by, and they just obviously can't be left responsible for holding themselves to account.
No.
Uh, so either you make these things totally public entities with an
Mhm.
arm's reach and some strong privacy laws in regards to, you know, obviously the government can't have direct access to people's data and information that needs to be protected. And I think
Yeah.
whether these companies go public or not, that is something that actually should be a high priority, is establishing some strong legislature that says what kind of data these companies can and cannot collect.
Mhm.
But that's besides the point. When you're talking about it being in government control in this context that we're talking, you got to have definitely some arms reach stuff happening where yeah, they can't just have direct access to everything
Yeah,
about you.
because and here's the thing is that like sure our governments, sway left on occasion,
Mhm.
but then they do stupid bullshit like elect Trump and go sway like way the fuck right. And
Yeah.
so if
Yeah,
we,
it
get
shows there's some things that are broken in the way that we talk about free speech and democracy when
mhm,
we create and cultivate the conditions for ignorant madness like this to be able to take place.
no.
And you can compare it all. Some can compare it all they want to, the actions of protest of the left, but say what you will. At least our goals at the end of the day is in the interest, obviously, in the interest of, you know, um, bolstering the working class and creating better conditions for the masses.
Mhm.
Um, like there's nothing you can say about what's happening in this pro-Trump cultist stuff that has that on their priority list. That's just not a thing that they seem to be worried about whatsoever.
Yeah.
Uh, it's I think we said this last week. It's definitely not driven by any sense of ideology outside of just bigotry and hatred. And we need to recognize it as such, and it needs to be stopped. We need to hold this to some kind of standard, and we can debate that and criticize that, but just to say, in these broad strokes, that people should be able to say whatever they want without consequence is obviously,
A terrible fucking idea.
yeah, it's a terrible idea. It doesn't work that simply. We have to think a little bit deeper about this and what the repercussions are of that. And we can debate about where exactly we draw that line to a degree. Of course, because some people will draw the line so far out that it basically doesn't exist, right? But
yeah.
But yeah, like there's a certain room for the amount of debate on how far one goes with this. But like again, like somebody said, like Angela Merkel even came out concerned that Twitter was able just to delete Trump's account, and how bad that is. And it's like, Germany has some pretty solid standards, not too different from like Canada or even England in terms of what constitutes hate speech.
Yeah.
They have their own terms for it. They have their own standards for it. They recognize that it's a thing that exists. Pretty much like in the abused and stretched out and misunderstood interpretations of the First Amendment in the United States is where you see the majority of this sort of free speech debate taking place, right? Like it's about that, because like to them, like the United States is one of the only places that doesn't really have hate speech laws and standards in the way you see it in like Canada, Britain, and what have you. So like it almost seems like the debate always like originates there in our intake from, of course, American media. And it's like, well, yeah, you can't just go up and like say, you could probably get away with just calling someone the N-word. You'd probably not get like arrested or fined for it, right? But if you called someone the N-word and you were interviewing them for a job, yeah, you'd probably have a problem on your hands, right?
Well,
And so it's not like it's like these hate speech laws are like super overreaching where it's like, oh, we can't even say the N-word anymore, as you see like these idiots whining about sometimes. It's like, oh yeah, you can definitely say it. You're not going to go to prison or something, but somebody like, might be real pissed off.
Of Arizona iced tea.
Yeah, you might get some twisted tea. Yeah.
But here's the thing: is that like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah.
Like we recognize that there's safety concerns.
That there are things that you can say, that you can verbalize, that are actively cause potential harm and danger to the people around you.
Yeah, like good luck being in the airport and saying you've got a bomb.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there are
Can't
reasonable
say those words. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a reasonable safety measures that limit your right to just say whatever the fuck you feel like.
Yeah.
And
so like, yeah, when you're talking about like the Voltaire quote where it's like, I may not like what you say, but I'll defend your right to the death to say it. You got to consider his time period. He was talking about like the grip that the Catholic Church had over like everything that was published and whatnot. Like, you got to give it some context there, because I don't think Voltaire in his time and place was considering what we're looking at right now.
No, not at all.
you know.
Like, how would he know that, people on Twitter would be able to do what
Mhm.
they're doing? Like,
Yeah.
none
And it's like
of
you can
that.
call this censorship all you want, but I would sooner call it just upholding some sort of standard that not only keeps people from harm, but doesn't waste our fucking time. Like,
Yeah,
really, do we want to continue to have some sort of public discourse about whether racism is good or bad? Like, do you want to
yeah,
stay stuck on this? Like, you want to waste airtime on this? You want to give space to people who want to make arguments for this? We've done this.
like
For the love
clearly,
of shit.
yeah, like clearly there are people who do,
Yeah,
and those people are
obviously,
bad and
but I
wrong.
can't, possibly think that the greater number of people, like when you're talking like in a democratic sense, that the majority of people have any sort of interest in protecting free speech to the point where, like, yeah, that's something that they want. Like, oh, that's just something we should allow because like,
Yeah, no, like, and that's it's kind
something
of this,
I shouldn't say allow, but like rather consider acceptable,
yeah.
and something
I
that we
mean,
can give space to and a
yeah, this
platform
is
to.
this is some of that wishy-washy bullshit of like, uh, to bring it back to the microcosm of, you know, Aunt Jane,
Hmm.
telling you not to
I have an
raise a
Aunt
child.
Jane as well, by the way, or
Oh, do you?
yeah,
I'm just
cousin
like, I'm
Jane.
thinking
Yeah,
Jane.
actually,
I'm
yeah.
thinking Jane Doe.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, Jane Doe.
yeah. So Aunt Jane Doe is, chastising you not to, tell Uncle Bob Smith off for being racist at Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's this wishy-washiness where, folks, are so terrified of, uh, making sure there's consequences for being an
yeah.
asshole,
Oh, if you find yourself saying, "Oh, I can't say anything anymore," you were responding to the fact that you already did say it.
right?
Like
Like, if you're saying it
you've
from,
said it already. You're just getting a response.
yeah, right?
But like, yeah, I'm trying to like kind of tie it into like a greater, in the greater point, a legal sense in what makes a legal standard for what is free
Sure,
speech and what should be acceptable. And it's like, yeah, I totally get the arguments and concerns over, you know, people feeling that type of censorship. But there's stuff that we can just obviously look at and know and understand as, yeah, that's just not good. It does
yeah, and
nothing
like,
but hurt people. We should
yeah.
probably just not not allow that.
And like, I think that these things always, when we bring it up to the larger societal level, larger
Hmm.
legal level, I think it's useful always to bring it
Hmm.
back down to the
Yeah,
microcosmic level as well, right?
like
Just to make it
yeah.
literally relatable, right? Into small circumstances that someone could feasibly, probably face, in their own lives.
Mm-hmm. And like
Like,
you,
for example,
yeah,
um, I'm not gonna go to Thanksgiving dinner and be like, you know what, Nana? Um, not only is the turkey dry, you're kind of ugly. And then I'm not gonna pout about like, man, people can't say anything anymore when
yeah,
I'm, evicted from dinner and never invited back,
yeah,
and I'm out of the will.
yeah. Like you can't just like go and say intensely inappropriate things to your family members and be like, I can't. What is this? It's like free speech is dead or something. But like
Yeah, right.
that's definitely an aspect to it. But like, yeah, if you're concerned about the fact that only a few companies can essentially control what is speech and what is media on the internet, then there's only one solution to that. It's an antitrust perspective.
Yeah,
There has to be an argument based around that. Now, if you're worried about, you know, oh, somebody's just started messaging me and sort of threw away my brain. But yeah, if you know, um, yeah, if you're worried in particular about,
fresh.
oh shoot, now I'm getting an echo back. Okay,
No, no, it's
anyway,
because, the dog is about to start barking. One sec,
oh okay, All right.
Where do I mute? One sec. I gotta put you on mute and let the dog out. One sec.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. She muted. All right. Yeah. What was I saying? But yeah, like you got, yeah. Okay. Going back to the antitrust perspective, yeah, you have to have the argument from there because, well, that's the only place you can start. You can't talk about like turning these things into a public asset and what that looks like unless you start breaking these companies up and start putting some regulations on what is privacy, what these standards are, and put it like on paper and hold these companies to account. Um, that's the only way you're going to be able to do it. And this is going to require, like, some sort of socialistic perspective where you got to have a certain amount of confidence in the competency of your government, which is obviously something we have a huge problem with right now as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I let the dog out. He was about to start, boo, because he's a big boxer. So yeah.
But, like when we're talking about executing action from left wing or right wing perspectives, you can see an obvious difference in how these things end up.
Hmm.
Left wing rage brings us,
The weekend.
the weekend, the 8 hour workday,
Yeah.
minimum wage, even like just the very
Child
concept
labor
of minimum
laws.
wage, the like maternity leave,
Hmm.
you name it. All those
Yeah.
rights and things that give us benefits as laborers that make our lives just decent um,
Hmm.
came from left wing fighting. Now, when you're talking about right wing rage, you're talking about what you saw on Capitol Hill, where it's just
Reactionary
senseless,
bullshit.
yeah, reactionary, directionless nonsense. Like, what are they really fighting for? What is the ideology that's happening there? That they're worried Joe Biden is a communist? Like, are you kidding me? That like just it's absurd. The whole thing. It's like it's
I
radical
wish.
in the sense of it's like radical reality. Like it's not a radical political ideology. It's just radical in the face of like objective fucking reality.
Yeah. No, it's pretty bananas.
Yeah.
Like, um,
I
but
could
at the
like
same at the
even
same
just
time,
today alone the amount that I've seen of people kind of yeah, just talking about like what communism is and what it looks like, and it's just these cartoonish ideas of what like left wing situations look like. When it's like, look what's happening here right now. Look how we're handling this pandemic versus
uh,
how much more socialist countries like in Asia and what have you have treated this virus, and they're much more successful at it than we are.
yeah,
They're
it's
kind of
because they
going
actually
back to living
value
normal
people.
lives. Yeah,
Yeah,
they valued the rights and lives of their citizens, and like you hear the argument that like, and again, yes, it's true. In China, they kind of treat their working people like just like cattle that can be just used. But it's like, how different do most of the working people in Canada feel?
yeah.
Do you feel any more fulfilled than just being some sort of like automaton?
I mean,
I
I
can
do
definitely say there's a
specifically.
lot of people that don't. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like cattle in my current role with my
Yeah.
current job. But
Yeah.
historically, when I was working minimum wage,
Mm-hmm.
and even jobs that were above minimum wage, a
Yeah.
hundred bazillion 2%. I was just a
Yeah.
number. I did not fucking matter. I would
Yeah.
be replaced in an instant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like to think that like in the same breath to think, oh, I'd hate to be in that kind of precarious position like they are over in that place while you're literally in that position.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild stuff. So like I don't know, kind of put the whole thing in a big bubble around like sort of everything we've been talking about is, um, yeah, if you're not considering how your approach and your opinion might be sort of bias in the favor of what's already just familiar to you, and you haven't questioned that and taken a hard look at what that means, um, I think you're doing yourself quite a bit of a disservice.
It's funny what you were saying previously about
Hmm.
Biden. It just about people accusing of being a communist. Oh my
Yeah,
God, hilarious. But like
yeah,
in a small way, just given January 6th, in a small way, I'm a little bit relieved that Bernie isn't the incoming president. Uh, Only because I'm kind of hoping that um, this centrist government will leave room for a more left government next election.
yeah. But
Like that's
the
literally the end
left,
of my
the
relief.
left in the United States has to get very active and very boots on the ground and pretty relentless, right from the get go. Here, I feel like they kind of have to seize this moment, and
And I feel like in a lot of ways they are. It
yeah,
just they
yeah, they may very
need
well
to,
be. Yeah,
well, like look at Georgia for example. So they just
yeah.
need to not be
I mean,
let
like
down by the
outside of
Democratic.
electoral politics, even like I mean, that's a good move in terms of as far as electoral politics go. But I mean, in terms of like now taking this democratic control that they have and
Oh yeah.
embracing the fact that it's not the GOP and really, really leaning into them about okay, like I know Biden doesn't want Medicare for all, but he better give it to us, and
Fucking
like
right.
yeah, yeah, like that sort of approach,
Mm-hmm.
um you know the establishment of the United States has been unfortunately very comfortable in this regard for a very long time, where they can just kind of look at a stat and go, oh wow, the vast majority of this country wants Medicare for all, but I'm not,
Anywho,
I'm not gonna do it,
no.
like fuck them, whatever, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, is that like also back to propaganda.
Mhm.
People, because they haven't literally fought in wars, they've been gaslighted into thinking that their lives are easy because of some of the amenities that they have
Oh
access
yeah, yeah.
to,
Well,
without
and this
understanding all the things that have been
lest
regularly
we
stripped from
forget,
them for
right? That's
decades.
the thing that all the people that in World War II, like died for and stuff, is
Hmm.
for all these luxuries that we have today. And of course,
Yeah,
they're
and so
luxuries
folks,
because people died in World War II for them. Never mind, how since World War II, how much both the working classes gained and lost in
yeah,
that time. But
yeah, like they um they have the propaganda has been so effective in teaching people that because they have an iPhone, that the fact that their minimum wage hasn't increased in the past 20 years uh, is not a big deal,
yeah.
right? The fact that their purchasing power has been eroding every single year, the
Hmm.
fact that you can no longer on a single income purchase a house and have a comfortable life, the fact that working full time no longer means that you're guaranteed a roof over your head and food in your belly, the
Hmm.
fact that none of these things are guaranteed anymore. But look, you have an iPhone,
Yeah.
right? Like, and
Hmm.
folks don't recognize this, and I don't blame folks on an
And
individual
part of the
level because
reason that like a poorer person can have an iPhone is
poorer people
yeah,
are.
yeah, like the amount that we've driven up productivity while driving down people's wages has made ostensibly otherwise luxury items extremely attainable. And you can say that's like capitalist advancement, baby, but at the same time you could have those people building those things just without necessarily this 1% collecting an absurd amount of the profits.
Hmm.
you know,
Hoarding. Yeah.
and the hoarding and things like that. Like you can definitely spread that around and give more benefits to your workers and create a condition like, you know, to me, I think one of the best ways that any industrialized society right now can, and like, you know, even like technologically advanced society, could right now begin to implement if they wanted to see a good, strong transition to socialism, is to start to implement um, policy that basically says, as a person works for a company, and as that company extracts value from their labor, in turn, the value that's being extracted is going towards a percentage of their ownership within that company. So you cannot have, like, say, somebody who starts a company and it now is the ownership class essentially become an active part of the non-working class and just extract labor from other people in order to make themselves absurdly wealthy, while those workers who are making that value never climb the economic ladder. You could create the conditions where after a certain amount of time they essentially do own the company, and that owner owns none of it, because now that person has put in, or the people that work there have put in so much time collectively that, yeah, he just can have no longer have a stake in that company. They own it now. You know, they eventually worked their way into owning it.
Yeah, and if
You know?
things like that sound radical, keep in mind that it is no longer a guarantee that if you devote 30 years of your life to a company, that you even have anything like a pension
Yeah.
or an opportunity to retire.
Yep.
Like these things that historically have been taken for granted as
Yeah. Like
part of
when
the
your
human
your
race.
grandpa talks about how, you know, great being a working class person in this country is, he was talking about a very different place than what we
Absolutely.
have
And I
now.
think that
Mhm.
older folks who don't like either who um, have retired previously or, maybe they've been housewives or just are part of the ownership class, they don't understand this difference. Like they
Yeah.
don't understand they fault the millennials uh, for not being, what's the word I'm looking for? Ugh. I'm thinking like monogamous to their job, but like
Yeah.
what's the
Mhm.
fucking word? For
Um,
not being loyal, for
yeah,
not being
like,
loyal to their job,
career
and so like
people, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like they fault millennials for not being loyal to their company and for just hopping at any opportunity comes their way,
Yeah.
not understanding that companies are not loyal to their employees. They're
Yeah,
not even
exactly. There's no,
responsible for
like,
their
in a lot
employees.
of places, it's obviously not 100%, and there's examples where it's better in some places than others. But yeah, generally speaking, any employee entering an entry level position in Canada right now does not have a whole lot of reasonable opportunity to economically advance.
And
It's just a fact.
it's not even new employees. It's like anyone in any part of the
Mhm.
ladder,
Yeah.
unless you are part of the
This is
professional
also
class.
true, but I'm just kind of like taking it from the angle where it's like, look at this. It's pretty undeniable. Like, but yeah, this is a widespread problem in many other like scales and things like that. But, you know, especially now, like anybody like millennials who have entered the workforce, and
Hmm.
younger millennials who are now entering the workforce out of college and stuff like that, and Gen Z, the
Hmm.
older Gen Z that is now entering college or probably in the middle of it, um, you know, they are not like, in even older millennials such as myself included, just never had an economic chance.
Yeah.
That the most educated people, the most educated generation in history, on pretty much like a worldwide scale,
Hmm.
can't get their value for their labor. So
I
it's
mean, that's not least of all because the older generations can't fucking retire,
yeah,
or they
that's
don't want
well,
to
and
because
they
they'll
keep
be
raising the
bored.
retirement age and things like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so as these changes happen, um, folks aren't fucking recognizing the
mhm,
impacts that is having on the workforce
yeah,
and like the workforce at large. Because, like I said, unless you are of the professional class, um, everyone's at risk,
yeah,
particularly the manufacturing blue collar class, because those jobs keep fucking ending and not getting replaced. Like, how many
mhm,
towns and counties and areas are just economically devastated because manufacturing has stopped and doesn't come back, or it does come back,
yeah,
but now the union has been wiped out and the
yeah,
company's been sold and bought by another corporation, and now they're just bringing in minimum wage labor to replace it.
yeah. Extracting, the same sort of product for the same market value for the capitalist ownership class, but yeah, the worker is just making far less.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's obviously disgusting, and it's something that we're obviously going to be diving into a lot more on future episodes of the show. Um, and so, yeah, thank you to the people who have been like sticking around the entire episode. But yeah, we've been kind of going for almost an hour and 20 minutes here, so I'm gonna sign off now. And
Because I miss you and I like talking to you.
well, I'm going to continue to talk to you after I go off the air. I just wanted
Yay.
to end the podcast and maybe have like a smoke and a drink and stuff like that. So yeah.
No. Yeah.
Thank you everybody for watching. I am Jimmy Ruffian. This is Nat Prince. Um,
Stay rough.
yeah, stay rough. There's going to be